Hello my dear friends, today we have a very exciting Star Wars news video. We finally have some updates for Andor, Grand Admiral Thrawn, and so much more, but we're gonna start with The Mandalorian. The Mando-verse, as we like to call it in the fandom, is changing and evolving. After the first 3 seasons of Mando, the Book of Boba Fett and most recently Ahsoka, the next 3 projects in this time period are changing the formula, and it starts with Skeleton Crew, which we now know was written in a similar way to Andor, but we'll get to that in a minute, then Mando Season 4, and of course Dave Filoni's Star Wars movie. So let me explain what I mean. I came across an article that's been making the rounds by Ringer.com, and they put forward an opinion that is shared by a surprising amount of fans. They say the Mando-verse needs a writer's room. According to them, on the writing side of things, we need more creative voices than just Jon and Dave, and I suppose Noah Claw, but it's primarily Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Now I should make it very clear they're not talking about the vast array of directors and creative decisions made on set, but as I say, the writing itself, the big story ideas, the structure of these shows. According to Ringer, the reason they're saying this is due to inconsistencies following The Mandalorian Season 2, so in other words, the Book of Boba Fett, Mando Season 3, and most recently the Ahsoka show. Now personally, while I do agree that the first 2 seasons of Mando were the best, I'm not as negative and pessimistic as to say it's completely all over the place, so I don't agree with their entire article. However, they do bring up some succinct and very solid points, and also it's in good faith. They're not out here bashing the shows that many of us love. You guys know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I love the Mando-verse, I'm here for it, I'm excited for the next stage of Jon and Dave's visions across these various series, but as you're going to see in this article, it's about to change, not with the titular show itself, but with Skeleton Crew, and to me that is so exciting. So no more jibber jabber, let's dive into the meat and potatoes, just the important bits. We'll skip the intro and just cut to the main argument. They say, quote, "One fundamental lesson of Star Wars is that it takes an Ewok village to raise a rebellion or win a war," which makes it more glaring that at the end of some Star Wars series these days, there is only one writing credit. Filoni and Jon Favreau, the primary architects of Star Wars TV, deserve plenty of praise for keeping the franchise on its feet during its post-sequel trilogy absence from theatres. And this is so important to note, guys. If it weren't for Jon and Dave, of course we did have Andor by Tony Gilroy and Kenobi by Deborah Chow, Star Wars would not be as relevant as it still is post-2019. They made The Mandalorian an instant sensation, giving Disney Plus a killer launch title and establishing a firm foothold for Star Wars in live-action TV. They constructed an interconnected narrative unspooled across several series and at least one future film. They linked Filoni's animated projects to live action, unifying the eras of Star Wars TV. But they say now due to creative inconsistencies, they need a quote, 99 style intervention, because these two appear to be taking on too much creative responsibility, which Ringer.com thinks is diluting the shows and affecting the quality. And I think even as someone who enjoyed a lot of Mando Season 3, we can't deny that the storytelling wasn't as consistent as the first 2. Some creative decisions and sometimes entire episodes kind of feel all over the place, and Ringer.com think, in the same way that Noah Claw collaborated for Book of Boba and Rick Famuyiwa did write a bit of Mando, it's time for a more collaborative process in more traditional TV show fashion, even if it's taking a risk. They criticised the comment made by Jon Favreau during Star Wars Celebration, where he casually stated, "Yeah, I've already written Season 4, proving the monolithic nature of the show." TV shows like Andor did have a creator's room, despite it being primarily Tony Gilroy, and interestingly enough, with a couple of exceptions, Disney is going to double down on the singular showrunner model, in particular with the Marvel franchise. But one thing this article reiterates is that the Mando-verse is about to be forced to change, not because anything's going to change on the titular show or Ahsoka, but they say Skeleton Crew was written through collaboration, and Favreau, while he was involved as an executive producer, was not the primary writer on the show. It was John Watts and Chris Ford, also using a traditional writer's room. This could make Skeleton Crew one of the most consistent seasons when it drops in 2024, and by its nature, whatever's established there is going to force Jon Favreau to comply with other creatives' writing choices, because Skeleton Crew does feed into Mando 4, as the rumors state, and Dave Filoni's Star Wars movie. So while I don't personally share a lot of these complaints, I do concur that Skeleton Crew is going to be a very good thing for this era. It's just going to bring something different, because one of the complaints fans had about Mando 3 or Ahsoka is how predictable the stories can get, especially in the last couple of episodes, a common criticism I've seen for Ahsoka Part 8. In other Star Wars updates, Thrawn Alliances is getting a comic book adaptation, which means we're going to get our first canon look at what the Grysk looks like, what the species looks like. We think of them as canon Yuuzhan Vong, but we actually have no idea. Now later in this video, we also have some more comic news, but now, on to Star Wars Andor. The second season of Tony Gilroy's masterpiece Andor is still quite a while away, but the fact we have some news is a surprise to be sure, and a welcome one. In the past, my dear Mandalorians, I have been very disturbed about the lack of a Disney Gallery behind-the-scenes doco for the first season. I would love to have seen the behind-the-scenes of the likes of the Battle of Ferrix, the heist at Aldhani, how it all came together, as well as insights from Tony himself, giving us a deep dive into the complexities of the various characters we've come to know and love. And while there have been some videos and photos shared, we now have some official behind-the-scenes photos of the show. Can you believe it? This is beautiful. Brasso and Cassian on Ferrix, Joplin, Sibtain, and Diego Luna being directed on set. This comes from Star Wars Insider issue number 221. We've also got Denise Goff and Carl Sola, Dedra Miro and Cyril Khan. And check this out, Dedra Miro literally smiling. I never thought I'd see the day. As revealed by the actress in 2022, she deliberately contorted her face, gave herself a sour look, in order to embody that bitter, imperial authoritarian mindset. Denise is awesome in the role. Dedra Miro is definitely already one of my favourites. And I know it's not much, but we've got to take any breadcrumbs we can. Here is Mon Mothma in the Imperial Senate on Coruscant, Genevieve O'Reilly in front of one of very few green screens used on the show. Industrial Light and Magic have also posted some behind-the-scenes stuff, mainly for the visual effects. In terms of an update for when we can expect Season 2, things don't look too good on the SAG-AFTRA front. The strike is still ongoing, with unsuccessful talks. Now, if just like me you're an Andor fan, coming up in a couple of weeks we've got a book, a visual guide called Dawn of Rebellion. This looks at rebels from across the Disney Plus shows, so The Bad Batch, Kenobi, but also Andor. And in the preview, there is a juicy section about Bix, Ferrix, and Malva, expanding the lore of the rebels we met in the show, as well as those who already appeared in Rogue One like Melshi. And from what I've read, it appears as though the book is trying to create a cohesion between the various series and the rebels therein, or at least all the shows that take place before the original trilogy. I'm excited for it, and so finally one last tidbit. For the longest time fans were wondering, when is the next time Disney Star Wars is going to acknowledge Mace Windu? Well, at the start of 2024, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace, we're getting a mini-series of comics that centre around Master Windu. Are we going to see some more Depa Billaba? Some canon Shatterpoint stuff? The possibilities are endless, and the party is just getting started. And I get it. You might be thinking, well Meg, it's just a comic series, what is the big deal? I often got the impression that Disney Star Wars was trying to avoid telling stories that focused on this amazing character. He featured in the Clone Wars Season 7, Tales of the Jedi, some novels here and there, under Disney, but in terms of dedicating an entire miniseries about him, gets me hyped. If you've been watching my channel since about the time of Mando Season 2, when the Book of Boba Fett was announced in the Mandalorian credit scene, I made a lot of videos theorizing how they might be trying to bring Mace Windu back. Now evidently they didn't do this in the Book of Boba Fett. A lot of fans want Mace Windu to stay dead, and I get it. But I suppose in the context of what George Lucas and Samuel L. Jackson have said, they intended Mace Windu to survive. But the more we dive into Star Wars content that takes place after Order 66, so the Bad Batch, flashbacks in Book of Boba and Mando, you start to realise the biggest problem, even post Return of the Jedi. Where was Mace throughout all of that? You would think he'd want to avenge the Empire, not go into hiding. That is the one thing they would have to answer. And to this day, Samuel L. Jackson has really put hopes out into the universe that he is going to return, but I understand not everyone is a fan, especially during a time where it seems like a lot of characters who probably should have died do not. Even Tamara Morrison wants Mace Windu in the Book of Boba Fett's second season if it ever gets one. I don't think Disney would be this daring, but if they did, could they hint at something in this comic mini-series? Could they leave it open-ended? If they're exploring his life, I imagine it's going to be a bit like the Kenobi comics where they start very early, when he's discovered on Harun Kal. They'll probably go through his trials and tribulations, and what led to him becoming a Jedi Master, because keep in mind, this is celebrating the Phantom Menace. I don't know if they'll go all the way up to Revenge of the Sith and explore his death, or supposed death, at the hands of Palpatine during the failed arrest, but I'm keeping my eyes peeled because I would love for that to be the case. Even just hinting that there's a chance he survived would give fans of the theory everything they need to believe that Disney might be considering bringing him back. If they didn't for Book of Boba Fett, I just don't think they ever will. So there's always the chance they could double down and confirm Mace Windu meets his end in episode 3. But Master Windu is one of those characters that fans are fascinated by. His skills with the Force and his lightsaber, and the type of character he was. He's already received a ton of exploration, despite having the potential for more story, which is why they're probably doing it in comics. We know the rule of Star Wars is typically no body, no death, but despite this tenet, it might be time for us to relinquish the idea that Samuel L. Jackson will return as Mace Windu. And George Lucas acknowledged multiple times, if it weren't for Anakin butting in, Mace Windu would have won the day. Setting aside the Mace Windu survived theories, I would love if they dived into the psychology with his duel against Palpatine in episode 3. There is a fantastic passage in the Now Legends novelization of episode 3, but a canon one would be phenomenal. So with that said, my dear friends, share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you, always.